Okay, we're live now. All right. So, Q, we started this conversation and about um, does the church need to evolve, and we've identified some things that I think created a really good kind of dialogue about church and evolution and all of that. So, given that we've had that conversation, I want to expand, and we're going to have some folks who are going to be coming on a little later. But while we're doing that, I did want to, I guess, kind of recap before we move forward. When we talked about kind of evolution, we looked at it along the line. You said something very interesting the other week. You said something to the effect that social media has, in some way, damaged the credibility of the church in terms of how it positions us and how these algorithms
Mm.
um, are at play to kind of keep us in this cycle, in this circle of doing things the way that that I would have to say makes the church look bad. Can you kind of talk about that a little bit?
I guess it depends on the context that we're talking about, but I definitely know that I will say this. Most of the things that we see via social media, when it comes to a lot of viral clips that we see from the church, whether it's Marvin Sapp or Marvin Winans, or now Yolanda Adams, Brian Carr, you can just go down the line. It's a whole bunch of stuff. What
Right.
I find in most cases, even if some of the things I cringe about, the one thing I do know is the full context is not given. And the bad thing about social media is we are in a small increment, soundbite, small clip age, and people are no longer concerned about context. And they will take a 20 or 30-second clip and they'll just run with it and formulate their own opinions. They'll formulate opinions about the person, about the church as a whole, and knowing nothing about the culture of that church. They don't know anything about denominations, and they don't even know the full story of what happened in those specific instances. So people do themselves. It's a tricky thing. It's a tricky thing. I think oftentimes you can do more hurt than you can help by showing these clips, or just making your church too accessible through the internet.
And I can't remember who it was, but somebody made the suggestion that, well, maybe we ought to take the church the uh, off the internet, or not show everything that happens in the internet on the internet. What are your thoughts concerning that?
Well, the first part of it, taking it off, no, that would be the wrong thing. It's a powerful tool that can be used for good or also can be used for bad. But you have to know how to most properly utilize that tool. So I do agree with the second part where everything probably shouldn't be um, listed on there. Now, the other thing is you don't have control over everything that you have control over your personal live stream. But do you remember when Kim Burrell got in trouble about her statements? That wasn't from her church camera. That was from somebody who was
Somebody,
recording in the congregation.
right,
You don't
right.
have control over that. So part of it is, if you're going to live in that world, then you got to kind of do some maintenance on the way that you operate. And the things that we did 20 years ago, we probably can't do a lot of those things. Which,
But
and I think you allude to sometimes, some of that stuff we probably shouldn't have been doing in the first place.
but
So
given
that's
but given that every kind of instance of a church now causes gives us the every kind of instance gives the ability to potentially go viral. These moments on that are captured on our church screens, and like you said, it wasn't Kim Burrell as much; it was everybody in the audience. So Pastor E could be as diligent and mindful as possible about what he allows to be streamed at EBC, but that doesn't actually change what could still be captured by somebody who sits in the audience. So, given that we have this atmosphere now where we have the potential to viral on almost anything and anything that somebody says, has the internet become too dangerous? Is it the wrong evolution for the church to evolve?
No, I mean evolution. It just is. So you just have to make sure that you're moving with that evolvement. And some of the things we get comfortable we get comfortable with the way that we do things. And the one thing, even, and I'm sure you know this in business, in any business that gets stuck in the way that they've always done things, they usually have a limited lifespan, and they probably close down pretty quick. The businesses that thrive are the ones who are flexible to change with the times, that change with technology, that change with supply and demand. I know this sounds weird to be talking about supply and demand when it comes to the church, but it's a real thing. If you're going to be on the internet, then you need to do it in a way, and you need to stay up to date and not just say, well, the way that we've always done it, it always works, so we just stick with that. No, if you're not keeping up with the times, then stay back. Stay back with those who stay off the internet, and keep your organ and your two songs and your testimony service and all of that, and stay in your bubble. You'll be fine. But you
So,
can't have it both ways you can't have it both ways when you want to be on the internet and then you don't take the time to understand the rules.
okay, all right. Pastor E, how would you respond to that?
Well, I didn't hear the whole question.
About have we evolved in the wrong way by allowing cameras and video and internet streaming? Have the wrong way? Have we gone too far in evolution?
You mean literally just by streaming?
Sure. I mean, given that things can be taken, because we're going to get to some of these things here in a minute, but given that some of these things can be taken out of context, uh, some things can be captured for those 5-second captures, and you go, okay, that ain't what happened, but the whole thing
I
isn't
don't
shown.
think I don't think we have taken it too far as it relates to live stream. I think some of the responses to the live stream have been taken too far.
Okay,
Meaning,
that's
I'll
interesting.
give you an example. I'll give you an example. Um, Sal, you know, it was just an opportunity to respond to a live stream according to what your intent is. Meaning, they intended to make it look like the church don't do number want your money. So that's how they responded to it. I don't think there's anything wrong with live streaming per se. As a matter of fact, I think we've learned that live streaming is just an additional arm of ministry, to reach those that can't be reached. And so I don't think we've gone too far as relates to doing it. I think we people have gone too far sometimes as to how they respond to it in order to look for opportunities to pick apart the church. Because when you're live, you got to understand you're at a genuine and vulnerable position because it's live, so you can't edit it. And so I think some people take that and become opportunists and you know take advantage of some streams.
Who's taking
Okay,
advantage of it?
so
Meaning people. If I'm understanding the question right, have we taken it too far as it relates to live streaming? No, I think in some instances, people who are on the other end of the live stream take it too far with their willingness to take advantage of the live stream just for clickbait. That's all it's about is clickbait.
you made an expression, Q, but I feel what Eden about right here.
Well,
Because
that's why we don't have control over them.
But I think that's kind of we don't have control over it. Have we weighed the difference? Because here's what I'm about. We're about to get into deep. There's a question that came up, and I do want us to address it, but I want this thought first. But I'm gonna show you the question that came up. It says, if your church is against gay marriage or transgender people, then I would say changes in them. And I want to remember that the comment, it says, if your church is against gay marriage or transgender people, then I would say change is in order.
Hold on. If your church is against gay marriage, was that what it was?
I have it on the screen. Can you see it?
No, because unfortunately you changed the app, so I don't have it on my computer.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it says, if your church is against gay marriage or transgender people, then I would say change is in order.
Oh, I would have to know the definition of against.
If you don't allow people, if you don't allow gay people to get married in your church.
Yeah, you don't.
Because even if you're for it, if you don't allow it to, if you don't allow them to take positions of ministry, if you won't marry gay people, then in their eyes you are against it.
Oh, okay.
So with that, I would say,
had no further comment.
Well, I would say, if you are against gay marriage or transgender people, what you need to understand that you're going against what the social expectation is right now, and for those reasons, you should be very particular about how you use social media and what you post on it. You probably shouldn't do a whole lot because your message is really not catered toward the masses in America today anyway. So you'd be better off doing kind of Geno Jennings thing. Maybe just put your stuff on YouTube. Stay away from live stuff. Stay away from because you are not the
kowtowing though, Q. But ain't that kind of kowtow? Ain't that
kowtowing how?
You're saying if you preach and goes against the masses of people, then you're saying the only way that pastors ought to be streaming is if they are okay with not offending the masses. And I'm not taking a position either way. I'm just
right. No, I'm saying
don't stream if you're going to offend people. If you're going to offend people by what you believe is to be the truth, then it's better off for you to not stream and just put it on YouTube. Come on. You can't really believe that, right?
Oh, absolutely. So again, what is productive? And for certain churches, if you have a mainstream form of thought, or you may even not agree with those things, but you're not outwardly opposing it, like a lot of churches, we just don't talk about that. That's what a lot of churches do. But if you're not, then what's productive? Is it productive for you to go against the grain in mediums that go the opposite direction? I'm just saying, what's more productive? Unless you just want to go viral constantly, which some people want to do, what's most productive for your congregation? And I don't think social media is for everybody and for every group and organization.
But what about if it's going to reach the audience that let's say Pastor E, and I'm not speaking for you, Pastor. I'm just using an example because you're on the live. Let's say Pastor E is not for gay marriage and he is not for transgenderism, but he has people he can reach who agree with him. He shouldn't be isolated from streaming because the majority of people don't agree with his position.
I can only say what is productive. Now, and
So you're saying,
let's be
as a
clear though,
church,
there's a difference between um, disagreeing with a lifestyle and being in complete opposition to a lifestyle. If your every other message that you have is about we need to do away with homosexuality, and you're specifically targeting that group of people, then
Okay,
unless
and
you're
I
trying to
think that's
provide, it's
different.
probably not the best. It's not the best route for you to use social media. Not live social media the way that we use it.
Well, I think that's different from how it was framed before. Wouldn't you agree, Q?
When you say how it was framed before, what do you mean?
Because you were saying, now you're saying it's going to be some you actively preach against, then maybe it's not the best way. And I didn't get that impression before. It was about active preaching against, just that's what it says. I
Yeah,
mean,
I'm,
but
I'm
that's
just
what
saying
you
there's a
believe.
difference in the way that you
That's what
preach
you
against
believe.
something. And if you do, okay, think about this. Do you see a lot of KKK and hate organizations doing a bunch of live streams and stuff like that? No, they know that that's not a popular message. That's a message designed for their base, and they use the proper channels to, um, promote their hate and their agenda. But you don't see a lot of people going on, and even a lot of people, they try to do it in code and they try to be more secretive about it. They know that it's not going to be a productive movement for them to get up on Facebook Live and on a lot of these places and talk about their hate speech in the same type of way.
Q, am
Then
I
we have
hearing you saying, if you am I want to make sure I'm hearing you.
sure.
Are you saying you should not live stream your services
I'm
if you
saying
preach against homosexuality?
I'm saying if it's not productive for you, then you should not. Though it or if you don't know how to use social media properly, then no, you probably should stay off of it.
But that's relative, though. I don't think it's improper because you won't compromise the word for the world.
What were we doing 20 years ago before social media ever existed? See, we acting like we have to be on social media all of a sudden.
No, we're not. We're not acting like we. No, 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 no. I'm asking the question. The question was, is social media gone too far? Not we have to be on social media.
Okay. Well, I thought that's what Dr.
No.
Bright was more talking about. Should we stay on it or should we stay off of it? I'm like, this is we don't have to stay on it. And this is the other thing too. Are you trying to speak to the world, or are you trying to speak to the congregation of believers who actually attend your ministry? Sometimes,
Well,
and again, and we know this for a fact. Now, let me just say this, Dr. Bright. There's certain things you don't go to other churches and preach because you haven't taken the time to educate another congregation or speak to them or kind of give them foundational principles that you can build off and speak. So there's certain conversations if you go into a guest church that you're not gonna you most people are not going to preach about because they haven't developed this other congregation to the point that they can receive it. But when we get on social media and we just put it out there for everybody, and a large portion of people don't have context, they don't understand your denomination, your foundational beliefs, principles, the way that you do things, anything, and then you just start preaching, and then you get pushback, and then people are surprised.
Dr. Bright, I'm sorry. Did you see my message in the chat?
okay. Yes, let me do that.
Send it there so I can get on my I need to be on my iMac.
Okay. I sure will. Okay. So, Bishop Foreman, what we've been talking about is first question that I've kind of posed that we've been having this conversation is have we gone too far? If in social media we need to pull back, is there something that we because the snippets that can be taken out of context, because these things can go viral at any time, even if it's not something that you said. But you cannot be recording, but somebody can be, taking a recording what you said in doing the service and have it taken out of context. My question is, have we gone maybe too far in evolution to be full on social media? Because I'm about to make a statement that's going to kind of curve us. And that question that I just asked was now kind of also in response to a question or a statement that was made, which is, if your church is against gay marriage or transgender people, then I would say change is in order. And having said that, kind of Q's thought was that if what you're teaching and preaching goes against the masses, then you ought not do it on social media. Maybe you shouldn't stream. Maybe you should just go in a group on YouTube or something of that nature. So I sure feel, since your church is full on live and you have an idea of what you could say that could be clickbait for some.
Right. And Dr. Wright, the question cut off right at the end. Could you give me a part of it? It was kind of going in and out on my end.
Oh, I'm sorry. And I want to know, since church is kind of full on live stream, do you think that maybe we have gone too far in how we stream?
I think, do I think we've gone too far? No, I just think people have to be mindful of what they're saying, and the fact that anything you say is essentially fair use, in the sense that anybody anywhere can see that, can take it and use it in any way that they want to take that. And I think the reality is, for all intents and purposes, it's always generally been that way, in the sense of where you could record, whether that was audio, old school, Baptist churches, they were having their church meeting or whatever, somebody sneak a recorder in or what have you. So people have always been able to record or do what have you. I think we live in a culture where, because things are such clickbait and because things are such controversial, can become controversial. I think the reality is you just have to be mindful that everything you're doing, you cannot just view it as the people who you're looking at. You're viewing the entirety of the audience. And I think with that in mind, have to be mindful about how you package what you do, how you say what you do. Not that, and I only caught the tail end of what the gentleman were discussing, but not that you necessarily need to water down or change whatever you believe your assignment is, but you need to be mindful of the fact that whatever you're saying that to an audience much bigger than whoever is in front of you. And so you need to be mindful of that, and you can't be mad if people take some of that and then go use that. I have 100 fake accounts of me on TikTok right now, where they use my videos, they comment on my videos, all of that. Some of the fake accounts got more views than my real account, and it's just, I'm mindful that everything I say, everything I do, to some extent, people will take it, people will use it. So your question is, have we gone too far? I think I don't think that's a yes or a no answer. I think the answer is anybody today, and this isn't just, let's go broader than church. I mean, with Ring cameras and stuff like that in front of your house and in your home, everything essentially is under some level of surveillance in some way. So you just have to be mindful of that and live and do what you're going to do, just being mindful of that. But I caught a tail end of it. And I just think if everybody operates within that mentality, is what I'm saying something that I'm okay with recognizing that this can be taken and this can be used and cut up a million different ways.
Okay, but having said that, now the follow-up question to that is, like the gentleman said, but if your church is against gay marriage or transgender, then yeah, you need to change. You need to grow. What do you
Need to
think
grow
about
or
that?
change in what?
I guess in its position.
Well, I mean, yeah, if that's your position, that's your position. I mean, to me, the theological question is a secondary question that we can get into. But if the question is, should you not stream or should you not go live or whatever because of your position? No, I don't think that's the case. I mean, there's a pastor, and I forget his name came to mind, but I won't say his name. But everybody probably knows who it is, who just says controversial stuff just for the heck of it. I mean, everything he says is controversial and intentionally, like antagonistically controversial, not just because of a theological stance, but he'll call people by name, lodge allegations at him, lodge false statements at him, and that's what he does. And he has got a great following of people who like to hear that. There is an audience of people who want to hear negativity. There's an audience of people who want to hear virtually everything. So, do I think that people should change their positions? I think that's a separate discussion theologically and values based. But I don't think people necessarily need to change their position. You usually be mindful of the fact that somebody may not like your position and they may take your video and they may demonstrate that they dislike your position.
So, Q, let me jump to you now.
Mhm.
Are there, this woman brings up a question that's kind of the great segue. Are there questions about our positions theologically that need to evolve that have?
This is what I say. If when you have an argument on one side, you need to make sure that the rest of your theology lines up with it. So when we talked about, like I said, I was telling you right before we started, I talked to a gentleman who had a certain stance about who God is and the gender of God and so forth like that. But then I said, okay, well, what about this scripture? What about 20 years ago when women weren't allowed to preach? What about every time if any man be in Christ, he is a new creature? But now you have a lot of pastors most pastors will interchange that. Well, that really meant mankind, or that also includes women. So I'm like, you kind of pick and choose when you want to evolve a certain scripture, and then in other ones, then you say, well, nope, that's just what the word says. It's like you're really picking and choosing what you want to be a hard line versus what's a flexible line. And that's what if you're gonna do that, then you got to re-examine all the other things that you kind of straddle the fence on.
So, Pastor E, Yolanda Adams has been viral lately, since we're talking about viral. She went viral because essentially not a quote from her, but a nation of what she said is that basically God can be identified as a she. What do you think when you hear somebody say that?
Oh, I don't think she meant it. I think it gets confused.
You don't think she meant it?
Why you don't think she meant it? I'm curious as to that. Why you don't think she meant that?
I mean, I still think she meant it. I think she said it because, first of all, her reputation goes like this. So one moment she says something like this, the next moment she'll say something else crazy. I don't think she believes that. I think she did that for attention, and I think it's probably some kind of. Yeah, absolutely. I don't believe she believes that one bit. There's nobody. Hell, atheists don't believe that. I think you think God has different genders. God can be either or.
I think gender is something that we focus on more than and again, in one aspect we say God is a spirit, and then in the other aspect he's a spirit, but he got to be a he spirit. He can't be a she spirit. Like, come on, let's make this make some sense here.
Oh, no.
If God is truly a spirit, then how much does that matter?
You're trying to make it be confusing by acting like it makes sense.
No,
right?
We're not trying to make it confusing.
God is very intentional. Well, first of all, do you believe in the Bible? Because if you don't believe in the Bible, then we're going to have this argument.
I do believe in the Bible. I do not look at the Bible as
so I think God is very intentional, right? I think whatever he wrote, he could have not written it, right? So God never identified himself as she, only he, right? And then when you start making he or she the issue with God in the Bible, it's not about God's gender. It's about your gender. You're trying to use God to defend you.
If it's not about God's gender, why are we so hell-bent on making sure we call God a he?
Because what we're not going to do is allow people who have a complex within themselves use God to justify and defend who they are. Don't put him in the mix because people don't like who you are, or you don't like who you are. As a matter of fact, let me not say people don't like who you are. Some people attack you for who you are. But we're not going to allow you to use God in order to make your argument or justify yourself. We're not doing that. If God wanted us to know that there's any type of question on whether or not he was a he or a she, he would identify as she. Period.
Okay, so here's my question in kind of playing a contrary advocate. You just did. We are okay with saying things like, and this might seem stretchy, but I'm gonna use it anyway. We're okay with saying things like, God can be anything to anybody. He can be everything to what somebody needs. He's a lawyer in the courtroom.
Mhm.
He's a doctor in the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
And we've said all that, and
Sure.
we're cool with that. But if somebody says, for me, he's a mother because my mother is gone, he's a mother for me. We go, wait a minute, hold on, put the brakes on that. What the heck are you talking about, right? And so this idea that God can be universalized to be whomever a person needs him to be, is that something we just discount as improbable?
Who you asking?
Yeah,
I was
without
asking you. I was asking you, and then I'm gonna have Bishop Foreman answer next.
Okay, because you did the same thing, right? Okay, so nutshell that question for me again, because I want to make sure I answer correctly.
So we accept these other positions of God,
Mhm.
and somebody says, "For me, I'm absent." You got it.
I got you.
Okay.
So first of all, for me to say, well, that's kind of like you didn't mean to do this, but you almost tripped over your own argument because we always say he's my mother when I'm motherless, my father when I'm fatherless, right? So that's not a good analogy. But I will say this, right? In that instance, we're talking about what God is to us, right? Not what God is to God. You can't change God's identity by explaining who God is to you. Period. Point blank. And I know why you said the contrary advocate, but point blank is this: if God wanted to be, if God wanted there to be a question about his, first of all, gender, let's just talk about that real quick, right? Let's talk about that. So my question will become this: why has God's gender not ever been questioned? And I'm gonna say, Roy, I'm not joking. You just know I don't know the levels, right? So, the Lord is gonna offend somebody, but some people look to be offended, right? But had the alphabet community not been such a huge deal, this question would have never arose. Am I right?
I think I can agree with that.
No.
To be honest with you. You don't agree with that, Ken?
No, the same thing that you were saying. God is not man, woman, black or white people. We've been saying that way before the whole LGBTQ
Who is
movement
we?
came along.
I've never heard it before.
You never heard that? Back in the 80s, people would say that God is not.
Say it again.
That he's not black, he's not white.
Heard a joke about that. God, he's not man or woman. He's not this and this and they was like, oh, is God Michael Jackson? I mean, I heard jokes about this way before LGBTQ even came. But it's now
I've
that
never heard God's gender be questioned.
Okay.
In my life.
Really? That's interesting.
As a matter of fact, Yana Adams was the first I ever heard of it.
I absolutely have.
Well,
and
I mean,
if she believes,
didn't Oprah say something like that many years ago?
I'm sorry. Let me say this. If she believes that God's gender is in question, then she needs to stop calling him he in her songs.
See, this is one of the things. So let me say this. And I guess if I can be a little more clear where I stand, I'm not saying that God is male or female, but I think the question shouldn't automatically be shut down when it's presented. Why can't God be also a she? Just like Adam, Eve was already within Adam before she was pulled out of Adam.
Mhm.
At least we can. I think the question is valid.
Okay.
And I
let's
think
go with that.
if you try to, whenever you try to talk about something through anthropomorphic terms, and where we're speaking about a spiritual God trying to give him human characteristics,
Sweet.
and
I
we've
believe
said
God is
this
very
over a certain
simple.
period of time. But I mean,
I think God is
think it's a
very
valid question.
intentional. God is actually more simple than what we complicate him out to be. But I'll use your argument. Why would God identify Adam as male, Eve as woman, but make us hold on to curiosity to what he is? Why is Paul Paul? Why is he a man? But yet
Because
God
he-
wants us to question who he is. But he
Okay,
was
so are we-
specific. Adam was Adam, Eve was Eve.
So
He wasn't specific
okay.
with himself.
Let me, and I'm not
So when
being funny.
when
I'm not
when he
being funny. Let me ask you a
identifies
question,
he in
Pastor
his
E.
word, then who is he talking about?
So do you believe God has a penis?
What do you mean? Do I believe God has a penis?
Do you believe God has a penis?
I believe God has a penis.
Okay.
I believe God identified himself as he.
So in that case, do you also believe that God physically came down and impregnated Mary? Since he had
Absolutely
a penis,
not.
he didn't have to do it just by the Spirit if he got a penis.
No, what you can't do, Q, you can't twist the Bible just to make your argument. We're not doing that tonight.
I'm not twisting anything. I'm asking you a question.
Like I told y'all, when you become the devil's activist, you will sooner or later become the devil. Nope. We're not going to twist the word. First of all,
What word? I'm asking
we're not
a
going to twist the word
question.
that you know good, right? Just to make a point. We ain't doing that.
No,
No,
I think that question is absolutely valid.
Okay.
Now if you decline to answer, that's I'm not making nobody answer no questions, but I think it's a valid question. Because and let's break this down. How in this society, how do we typically define what's a male and a female? By a penis and a vagina. Is that correct? Okay, if that's correct, then if you're saying God is a male, then I'm asking, does God have a penis? That's a valid question. So now again, so if God has a penis, why would God have a penis? What is a penis used for? It's used for procreation, sex and procreation. So are you saying that? So now when I ask you, do you believe God came down and physically had sex with Mary? That's a valid question if God is a penis carrying male.
No, because the Bible said he does. As a matter of fact, let's go on your logic. God wouldn't have a penis. You're right. God doesn't need a penis, right? But if penis is what you're using to describe he, him, or whether he's a man or woman, then I go with God has a penis. I know God is a man. I know God is a he, because that's what he identified himself as. And what I won't do is I will not allow people, right, who have issues with their own identity to throw God up in the mix just to make themselves feel better about who they are. I'm not compromising like that. Not doing it. Not, as a matter of fact, this is a silly conversation.
I disagree completely. But
you
got the right to believe that, though.
I want to get your take, because I think there's another element to this that I want to bring in, even though we started out talking about this is based off of the Yolanda Adams thing. But Bishop, you look like you want to answer the question earlier.
Yeah, well, yeah, there's a lot that's been said. So I love robust conversation and intellectual jousting, because I think a faith that can't be defended is a faith that can't be trusted, and positions that can't be defended in an intellectually honest way, I think, are positions that that are troublesome in their substratum. That being said, I think to your question about Yolanda Adams, and that I think the reality is that God, he said, this is what he says. Moses says, "What is your name?" We don't know your name. He's personified as he, but that's also because the writers of the scripture are he's. He's personified that way. The response is, "I am." I am is a Hebrew term, ayer, asher, ayer, which means I will prove who I am based on what I do. We call him Jireh because Abraham named him that when he provided. We call him Sabaoth because he was called that as the God of war. The names that we ascribe to God were based on people's experience with God. So I disagree with the notion that because of somebody's experience that you can't identify God in that way, because that's literally the names we have of God were purely based off of people's experience with God. So that's just a fact. But the response is, I am. And so I think if we limit God to the box that we want to put him in, based on the social construct and the cultural construct of our human experience, I think we're missing the entire point in the first place. Is that's the whole issue when scripture. We just finished a series called No Idols, and the whole goal of an idol was to localize God, to pull him down, to make him in our image and our likeness, so that he was something we could control. And so, to me, if one says, "Well, he can't be that," well, I mean, I think you're missing the exact point, because he said to Moses, "I am." He didn't say, "I am Bob." I am. He never called himself Yud Hey Wafe. We call him that.
Mhm.
These were names we ascribe. He didn't call himself Yahweh. These are names we ascribe. He said, "Don't put me in a box." He said, "I am too big for your comprehension." So as a result of all of that, I think the spirit of what maybe she said, I think is fair play, and I think the reality is for everybody and anybody to put him in a box. And again, I'm using him because that is the way that he's been personified throughout time. But to put God in a box, I mean, that's just to me, that's just a fundamental, basic misunderstanding of the entirety of how he introduces himself to us.
So let me ask you this real quick in response to that. Are you postulating then that had been a book written by a woman, that it is that one writer would have him as a she? Because what you said was is that people identified him based on who they were to them, and we have, so as a result we see God shown as male. Are you postulating, had there been a female writer, we may have heard God as she?
I'm postulating, is that possible? Yes, but to me, the higher point is it's irrelevant, because to one of the scriptures that was referenced, God is spirit. We're introduced to him in Genesis as a moving spirit. I think to me, it's irrelevant, because male and female was something that was necessary for the purposes of procreation in the earth. So to me, is it possible? Sure. Is it relevant? No. Does it change? And that gets into so many depths and so many different things. But the postulation is, sure, is that possible? Absolutely. Just like the owners of slaves, when they saw this book, they saw themselves through the lenses of those who were supposed to dominate and take over cultures of people and become colonizers. Just like those who were enslaved and oppressed by people saw this book and said, "Oh, we see our God is the God of the liberator." So I think a lot of how we view God is got more to do with us than it does with the totality of who and what God is.
I want to add on, well, not add on to it, but to answer your question, Dr. Bright, if one or two books were written by women, it is possible, but it's still also possible that it's not, because you're
Mhm.
still in a male-dominated society. Now, if
Yep.
90 to 100% of the books were written by women, I think it would be probable that you would hear different language other than what we hear right now.
Okay, so now I'm about to go into something very, very, very potentially offensive, but not
I
for the
love it.
sake of offense, but just because you've brought these things. So is it possible then, if you're saying that, and not you, but I'm saying if we understand God as being male, which I happen to ascribe to, so let me just say that I see, but uh, and maybe that's my point of view, and that's not necessarily the most important thing. And I never thought in terms of answering the question that Pastor, when you say, "Well, does God have a penis?" and and then you took further, where did God come down and physically have sex with Mary? Is it possible that how God shown or pictured to us that we say, well, did Mary okay this impregnation of Jesus? Or was she taken
Oh
advantage
Lord.
of by God?
Some religions actually believe that.
And I get a very, I get these are very uncomfortable questions, but I mean, this is where we kind of led this kind of to. Q, you shaking your head no.
No, some religions believe. You look into the Jehovah's Witnesses. They
It's
believe
like,
it
oh my
was a
God, what in
physical
the world is
impregnation.
going on?
Okay, so is this
I'm
how
saying
the
that again,
conversation
I'm
was going tonight?
We're talking about a lot of different things about is where we are actually in evolution.
No, that's not no. This is we're talking about as a church how to evolve. Not
These
what
conversations shouldn't get you rattled, Pastor Eve.
I'm absolutely not about that conversation. I promise you, I'm not.
These
No, we're talking about
conversations
does the
should not
church
get
need
you
to
rattled, sir.
evolve?
Because I think at some I think the problem. Shoot, Joe, shut up. The problem with the churches,
Say what you want to say,
the
Joe.
church. The problem, because to be honest with you, and I've been dealing with this for the last 2 months of my church. Because to be honest with you, I'm kind of fed up with it. Because I think not that the church needs to evolve, but I think the church again has evolved too much because we spend so much time trying to fit in with the world instead of allowing being a true disciple, right, and go disciple to the world instead of turning God until this comfortable place, the church, the religion, anything to this comfortable church, to this comfortable place for those who don't believe. And now we're talking about, does God got a penis? I almost said something else. Now we're talking about, did Mary get raped? I'm not part of all of this foolishness. That don't make no sense to me. And most of that conversation for people that outside the church are people that don't believe anyway. They just want the controversy, right? And so I'm like, what's the name? I'm not dealing with none of that foolishness, right?